This is Mos Espa, and I am Daimyo here.
Oh.
Welcome back, everyone. This will be my full Star Wars Book of Boba Fett Episode 2 video. The Sleeper has awakened, so we found out how Boba Fett joined that tribe of Tusken Raiders. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs. We found out who's going to be the main villain for at least the first part of the series, if not the entire series, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, I'm doing videos for all the episodes. Be sure to subscribe to get them. We're also doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is just be a subscriber and let me know what your favorite moment from the episode was in the comments. Careful for spoilers from the episode if you haven't seen it yet. We'll just start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs, WTF moments as we go along. Starting with the title, Chapter 2, The Tribes of Tattooine, a reference to the different tribes of Tusken Raiders because Boba Fett joins his tribe of Tuskens officially, and it's also sort of a sly reference to the tribes of the criminal underworld, like the Hutts that show up during the episode Jabba's Cousins. But mostly they're talking about the different tribes of Tusken Raiders. I made a couple of Dune references during my episode 1 video. There's so many Dune references during this episode, I'll point them out as we go along, but you probably spotted some of the more obvious ones. A lot of Lawrence of Arabia references too. The opening scene is of Fennec Shand bringing the assassin they captured back to Jabba's palace so Boba Fett can question him. They say he's from the Order of the Night Wind and set up this big trapdoor Rancor pit joke because you can't do Jabba's palace, you can't have him sit in the throne room there without them using the trapdoor at some point. But if you've seen Return of the Jedi, which most people on the planet have, you know that Luke Skywalker killed the Rancor, so they play the scene the same way they played that Luke Skywalker scene with the door just rising up slowly, but obviously you know that there's nothing there. And the assassin reveals what we all suspected after episode 1, that he's connected to Mok Shaiz, although they try to play it in a more complicated way, blaming the Hutts for everything later in the episode. The order they say he belongs to, the Night Wind, didn't exist in Star Wars before this, so they created it for the episode. There were a couple creatures and terms that they created brand new for this episode that didn't exist before, so I'll point those out too as we go along. But if I didn't say it during my episode 1 video, Matt Berry from What We Do in the Shadows is the one who's doing the voice of the 8D8 droid, so if he sounded familiar, that's why. If you're wondering why Bib Fortuna never replaced the Rancor with another one, I think what they were trying to establish during episode 1 when Boba Fett was just first going around to survey all of Jabba's territory is that Bib Fortuna was very bad as a crime lord. And Rancors are native to Dathomir, where the Night Sisters come from, so it's incredibly hard to capture a young one and take it back in captivity. Like the young Rancor that the Bad Batch saves for Jabba during the Bad Batch series was one of his most prized possessions. But they go back to Mos Espa to visit the mayor with the assassin in tow. They pass a bunch of Trandoshans, and everyone's hoping for a boss cameo scene, but there are like so many of them grouped together in this part of town that you just wonder if they're trying to foreshadow Bosk eventually showing up. They have a couple funny jokes about people not knowing Boba Fett's name, like, oh, you on the list here? What's your name again? Boba what? Boba who? As if he's not the most famous bounty hunter in the galaxy. The Major Domo mentions Jabba's litter again, as if everyone and their sister on Tatooine only recognizes new crime lords if they're floating around on litters, but I also think this is meant to set up the payoff of Jabba's cousins showing up, the twins showing up on the actual litter. So that's why they've been mentioning the litter so many times in the last couple of episodes. But like I said last week, Robert Rodriguez, the director, is also playing the mayor here, the Ithorian.
Who is this who enters unannounced?
So this is his second cameo scene and second character on the series. We'll see if he shows up as other characters in later episodes too. That would be fun if he winds up playing like 5 different characters in the series. The armor that his guards are wearing looks kind of similar to the armor that Captain Panaka wore in Phantom Menace, a movie that also spent a lot of time on Tatooine in Mos Espa, where we are here, because that's where Jabba held the pod races. The mayor tries to save face by paying Boba Fett as if he's paying him for a bounty, like, oh, it's illegal for them to operate out of Hutt space, so here, let me pay you the bounty, as if this is meant to be recompense for the tribute that he did not give him. And he tries to throw the Hutts under the bus, like, oh, think who might hire them if they only operate in Hutt space? Maybe it was the Hutts. But that's why he tells him to go visit Madame Garso Fwip again, the Twi'lek played by Jennifer Beals, who owns the bar. And I know a lot of people were wondering if there was something secret going on with her character, like is she hiding some giant secret? Is she secretly way more powerful than she lets on? The way Jennifer Beals described her character here is that she's like Rick in Casablanca. And in that movie, he owns this nightclub. It's sort of like a Switzerland neutral type of territory where he wields a lot of power inside the bar, like he has a lot of contacts on both sides of the war. but he himself isn't like this secret big bad or anything like that. So I think that's Jennifer Beals trying to tell us that no, she's not secretly some huge villain, but she does have deep connections, she is very smart, and she is powerful in her own right in this local area here. But she's not evil or anything like that, like she's not out to get Boba Fett. When he says that she's sweating like a Gupta on Mustafar, Guptas are also a brand new creature that they created for this episode. They didn't exist in Star Wars before, but you get the metaphor. It's meant to be like a cold weather animal that wouldn't be able to survive in the heat of Mustafar's lava fields. And when she says the twins are coming to claim their late cousin's bequest, obviously they're talking about Jabba the Hutt's cousins, coming to claim his criminal empire, which they feel belongs to them. Like if you died, your nearest living relatives would fight over your will. And they do show up with a tablet, which seems like a Star Wars version of a will. Canonically, none of Jabba's cousins were twins, but he did have two different cousins from different uncles. So Zero the Hutt from the Clone Wars, you all probably remember, only had one son, and his other canonical uncle, Ebor the Hutt, didn't have any known children, so the twins could just be the children of Zero, and they could have just changed the canon for this episode, but the twins are a brand new thing to Star Wars. And I will say the CG for the Hutts has gotten way better since the special editions of the original trilogy and Phantom Menace. They're much younger than Jabba, so they're not quite as big as he was, but together they're about as big as he got right before his death in Return of the Jedi. And you do have to feel bad for this hodgepodge menagerie of different aliens serving them, carrying them on their backs. Like that's got to give them some serious back problems after this. Then the Wookiee is actually a huge deep-cut Easter egg for the Star Wars canon. So it's actually Black Krrsantan. He's a Wookiee bounty hunter that's featured a lot in the comics during the timeline of the original trilogy, like the Dr. Aphra comics. When Boba Fett starts talking about being a gladiator, that's a reference to Black Krrsantan's backstory being captured from Kashyyyk. He started out being forced to become a gladiator in fighting pits. But then he became a bounty hunter working for Jabba the Hutt, working for Darth Vader to capture agents of the Emperor. He hunted Obi-Wan Kenobi. But if you didn't get the vibe just from looking at him, he is meant to be a badass. He is legit. When Boba Fett references the death pits of Dur, that's also a brand new planet that they just invented for this episode. They make another Trandoshan reference. Like I said, there's just so many of them sitting around this area here. You do wonder if they're trying to foreshadow Bossk eventually showing up later in the series, if they're doing so many bounty hunters from the Star Wars universe. Now, Hutta that he talks about is the capital of the Hutt Empire, and for those of you that were complaining last week that Boba Fett wasn't wearing his jetpack, and why would he go to town without his jetpack, you can clearly see that he did not repeat his mistake this time. Jetpack with the rocket launcher, which we saw Cobb Vanth use a couple times during The Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 1. We should all take bets on when Boba Fett's going to use his rocket launcher on this series for the first time. You cannot tease that rocket launcher without letting him use it at least once during these episodes. And the way he throws the gauntlet down and Jabba's cousins threaten his life like Sleep lightly makes it sound like they want you to think, at least right now, that the two of them, the twins, will be the main villains of this season, but they could always surprise us later with an even bigger crime lord villain, like you have Crimson Dawn, or whatever Crimson Dawn turned into after Darth Maul's death, or any of the other organizations that made up Darth Maul's shadow collective of crime lords, like we see the Pike Syndicate later in the series too, so there are a lot of other criminal organizations around the galaxy that are very powerful. But it does make sense that they would use part of Jabba's family as villains during the series, given that Boba Fett is trying to currently take over Jabba's empire. The funny reason why Fennec Shand says that they have to get permission to kill the Hutt twins is because of the treaty that the Hutts, as a people, have with the New Republic. The Hutts were kind of like a neutral group during the Galactic Civil War between the Empire and the Rebellion, and a lot of the weapons and ships that the Rebels acquired came through the black market in the Hutts. Like the Hutts were hedging their bets so that no matter who won the war, the Rebels or the Empire, they would benefit financially. So as a way to say thank you, the New Republic has a loose treaty with them, allowing them to continue operating their business without being harassed by the authorities too much within limits, and as part of that, no one gets to go kill a Hutt without a bunch of paperwork. So it is a little bit of plot armor protecting the Hutt twins, because otherwise Boba Fett probably would have killed them on the spot. But back in the Bacta tank later, they flash back to the Tusken Raider timeline after he got out of the Sarlacc pit, after the events of Episode 1, and they basically tell the rest of the story about how he became part of their tribe. They start training him how to fight with the gaffi sticks, and the interesting thing here that you probably didn't notice just from looking at their costumes is the Tusken Raider who's training him throughout the episode, and who also has a bunch of badass takedowns on the train later, is a female Tusken Raider. You have to have female Tusken Raiders, otherwise where do you get those tiny little Tusken Raiders from? It's just that all the robes hide their features so much you wouldn't know just from looking at them. I know everyone's wondering what they look like under their masks. There have been a couple examples in the Legends canon, so this is like the closest we have to what they probably look like. They do look humanoid, and they do take people in like Boba Fett joins their tribe, so just like the Mandalorians aren't all born Mandalorians, like some other people join their clans. In the case of Boba Fett, occasionally other people will join tribes of Tusken Raiders. But all the gaffi stick training just explains how he got so deadly with it during The Mandalorian Season 2 against the Stormtroopers, and where he got his gaffi stick from, because we see him making it later in the episode. After he has his big Paul Atreides Dune Water of Life sequence, the Boba Fett sleeper has awakened. The other funny thing about these two, the gaffi sticks, is they serve a practical purpose as well in their culture. They use them for cleaning the bantha's teeth, so they're not just weapons. But this is all just part of him learning their ways. The creature that pops out of the sand that runs off that they kill is called a buboicular. It's one of the frogs from Return of the Jedi outside Jabba's palace. They're kind of like frogs crossed with dogs. They just literally call them frog dogs. Then they set up the whole train heist later in the episode when the Pike Syndicate drives their train through the Dune Sea and winds up killing a bunch of their people. And as you see in the last couple of episodes, they use this whole sequence here, them kind of mourning the dead, that funeral pyre, to humanize them even more than they did during the Mandalorian episodes. And they're just showing you how Boba Fett is growing to respect them more and more, and how being with them is slowly changing him, his ways, his personality. So if you feel like Boba Fett in the Boba Fett series is acting very differently from what you remember of Boba Fett in the classic series, this is why, because of his time spent with the Tusken Raiders. But as part of the train heist, he goes after the Red Niktos gang that you saw hurting the moisture farmer in episode 1 to get their speeder bikes. And the bar where they're at here is a huge Easter egg for a deleted scene from A New Hope. When Luke goes to Tashi Station in Anchorhead talking to Biggs Darklighter, all of his other friends, this is the same room that Boba Fett walks into that they're using as the bar. Obviously, they recreated the set for the episode, but it's meant to be the same basic place. The gun breaking on him just gives Boba Fett an opportunity to put his new gaffi stick skills to use. And I love the way the Tuskens turn into a bunch of Jawas the minute he comes back to give them the gift of the bikes. Like, no, please don't bust these up for parts. I'm going to teach you how to ride so we can take down the train. But in sort of keeping with a lot of the Dune references and metaphors that they're going for during the series, a lot of Star Wars is inspired by the Dune series. The train attack itself is meant to evoke imagery of the Fremen trying to board one of the sandworms. More literally, it's also a reference to Lawrence of Arabia and Boba Fett himself, kind of like the Lawrence of Arabia figure when they're taking down the train in that movie. Like I said, the aliens who are controlling the train are from the Pike Syndicate. Mostly you saw them during the Clone Wars, but they did show up during Solo: A Star Wars Story. The Tusken who jumps the ship later and starts destroying all of them here is the female one who is training him with the gaffi stick. Love how the conductor droid also just yeets out the window after wrecking the engine so bad that they're about to blow up on their own. They reference spice, which in the Star Wars universe is also inspired by the spice melange from Dune. The planet Tattooine, desert planet, also inspired by Arrakis. When the Pike leader says he thought that they were uncivilized raiders, that's kind of how the people in the Dune series thought of the Fremen. And that's the same way in the classic trilogy that the Tusken Raiders were portrayed, the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi talks about them to Luke Skywalker. They also have a clever way of explaining that later in the episode too. There are some of us who survive by killing people, other tribes try to survive in a more peaceful way. And Boba Fett sets up that lasting deal for the Tuskens to be paid tolls by anyone trying to ship goods, spice, illegal or otherwise, through the Dune Sea in exchange for their protection. You can see they're really trying to give the Tusken Raiders an arc during this series, the same way the Fremen have a huge arc during the Dune series. But it's back at their camp that the leader tells Boba Fett the history of their people, going back thousands of years to the time when Tatooine was covered in water. There's also some water references later during Boba Fett's visions when he's tripping balls. So at one point, Tatooine was covered in water. More Dune references, like Arrakis was covered in water. During the series, the Fremen talk about having visions of it being covered in water again. And when Boba Fett says you shouldn't have to hide your warriors, they're trying to draw a parallel to the Mandalorians that are living in the Outer Rim who survived the Purge, like they've been forced to hide until recently when Mando reclaimed the Darksaber and they took down Moff Gideon. But clearly you can see he's trying to help modernize them, like, oh, other people, Outworlders, have technology, but now you have technology too. You have ships, you have speeder bikes. They also have the modern supplies, the modern weapons that they took from the Pike Syndicate. Then this whole metaphysical mind trip that they send him on is another Dune reference to Paul Atreides taking the water of life and the visions that he has. The dust the leader throws in his face is spice, just like the spice melange. I love the joke about the lizard climbing up his nose though, like, oh, I thought that I ate that. Meant to help guide him in a psychic sense on this metaphysical journey that he goes on, as he flashes back through his past, his present, and his future. Like this is meant to help him find a new path. Obviously, in present day, we know that that path involves taking over Jabba's former empire and becoming a crime lord himself, but that's only part of the story. There were a lot of people after episode 1 who were like, why? Why are they making Boba Fett a crime lord when he's a bounty hunter? Like, why would he want to be a crime lord? What's the whole point of this? This whole journey that he's going on with the Tusken Raiders and how he's getting tied up in their culture is meant to help explain that. But I think it'll take a couple more episodes before we find out what his true plan is for the Tusken Raiders in present day, because all this stuff is happening in the flashbacks. But as he gets caught up in the tree branches, he flashes back to the Sarlacc pit, he sees himself in his father Jango Fett's helmet, then he flashes back to Kamino, watching his father fly away in the Slave One, also kind of foreshadowing him taking the Slave One back in the flashbacks. All the different red eyes that he sees are the red eyes of the Jawas. Then he has this crazy vision of water bursting out of the sands of the Tattooine desert, mixed with visions of him escaping the Sarlacc pit, breaking free through the sand, and breaking free from the tree. So they're just trying to say that Boba Fett is going to have a continuing relationship with the Tuskens in present day, and because water is such a precious resource for them, like the water bursting out of the sands of Tatooine, I think is meant to be more of a metaphor for the way that Paul Atreides, say, helped the Fremen when he rose to power. Like Boba Fett is going to rise to power as the crime lord taking over Jabba's territory, and is going to use that power to try and help the Tuskens. I've been making a lot of Dune references, but I guess you could also think of Lawrence of Arabia references with this too. The branch that he returns with, he winds up turning into his own personal gaffi stick that we saw him use during The Mandalorian Season 2, and this is sort of the continued process of him officially becoming part of the tribe. Like, this is part of a rite of passage. So if it wasn't clear in the present-day timeline, the robes that he wears underneath his Mandalorian armor, Boba Fett's classic armor, are the Tusken Raider robes. In that cool tribal dance that they do after is just meant to be the celebration for him officially entering the tribe. Like, this is the end of the initiation. But if you spotted any other big Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. My full Book of Boba Fett episode 3 video will post next week just like normal, and next week the DC Peacemaker HBO series will start too. I'll be doing episode videos for that. Make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss that. We're also probably going to get a Moon Knight trailer pretty soon too for the Marvel stuff. That'll start after the Book of Boba Fett is done. Everyone click here for my brand new Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness Marvel video, and click here for all my Star Wars Book of Boba Fett episode videos. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.